This is Atomic Shinobi, and today I'm going to narrate second and final part of what if Naruto was trained by Dragon of the West. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no time, let's start the story.
Stadium field strength. Pure, sadistic, unmatched power is known to be a great ally for some people but the bane of existence for many others. It is something that must be earned through hard work and a long period of time. It cannot be taken. True power necessitates dedication and unmatched resolve, and it is far more valuable than life alone. Those who have the courage to tame such a creature will become legendary. Why? Because there is only one thing that can be said of those who maintain power without corruption. Superb is the ideal term to characterize the adolescent before them. As she got back to her feet and waited for the dust to settle out of her eyes, Urza muttered, "I can't believe it." His attack was so full of raw magical power that it almost sent them all packing early. When she opened her eyes and looked closely at the attack's aftermath, she was shocked to see a large crater that appeared to extend several feet down the center of the stadium. Incredible. She and the rest of the audience gaped in wonder. The battle as his eyes turned back to vivid blue, a certain blonde muttered to himself, "Ma. Maybe I overdid it." As he observed the devastation his technique had caused. Since he concentrated about a tenth of his magical power on that single attack and somewhat compressed it, he wasn't shocked. It could have been fatal if he had compressed it more, and he did not want that. From the opposite side of the crater, the blonde heard Gildart's muse say, "Not bad." The veteran was impressed despite appearing unfazed by the attack. He appeared to be unaffected by the dust and hadn't left his position. Naruto challenged the fairy tale ace directly, saying out loud, "So how about it?" The blonde teen was confused when the man laughed and shook his head negatively. As if on cue, a lightning bolt sped toward the young sage, warning everyone with a sudden sound wave. "I would love nothing more to fight you, Naruto-san. But Luxus over there wouldn't appreciate it much." Naruto sighed, positioned his palms toward the bolt, and quickly created 3 one-handed seals. Futon. Shinku Kyushu, vacuum suction. The air in Naruto's hand swiftly took on the shape of a spiral. When the lightning struck, it was instantly absorbed by the tiny wind spiral before dissolving. Naruto said with a hint of amusement, "Interesting, that almost caught me off guard." Almost. With a look of pure excitement on his face, Luxus emerged from behind the dust, most likely because the other blonde had almost completely destroyed the area in a single attack. "Zee, I'm gonna crush you," he said, slamming his palms together as his magical runes suddenly erupted in electricity. Luxus yelled, "Rockerai! Thunderbolt!" and hurled several branches of lighting at the resident Jinchuriki without showing any pity. Naruto shook his head and ordered his shadows to protect him from all sides. Kage Isha, shadow projection. The younger blonde quickly used the shadows behind him to reroute the attack back at Luxus after absorbing it similarly to how he did with Evergreen. However, rather than yelling in agony as Naruto had anticipated, he stood motionless and grinned. The young sage pondered out loud, "How strange, I assumed a strong attack like that would have you on your knees." Naruto's eyebrows shot up as Luxus laughed back. He nodded in comprehension as he finally realized that he wouldn't be able to defeat them alone. "Come on, man. It's my magic. Y'all actually think that my own magic would hurt me? I'm not some squirt like Evergreen. My magic and I are one, in his base form, that is." Luxus smiled and gestured behind him. Wait. Where's Mira and Urza?" he asked. Both Urza and Mira charged at him with the same ferocity as before. Urza swung her sword to his waist and repeatedly slashed him, while Mira leapt and delivered a roundhouse kick to his head. Naruto fell to his knees, gasping in agony, and everything happened in an instant. Luxus smirked smugly as he watched the young sage breathe on the ground and remarked, "You're strong, but awareness is important in a mage too." Neutrally, Gildart said, "Ma, be careful, Luxus. That's not him." The blonde's face scrunched in bewilderment and the smirk was wiped away. The teen pointed to the still, gasping Naruto and said, "What do you mean? He's right there." Gildarts laughed and glanced at Naruto's shadow, which was now rapidly convulsing. Luxus's eyes widened, and he leapt back just in time to escape Naruto's sudden explosion. The 3 mages, with the exception of Gildarts, who was smiling at the younger man's small plot, exclaimed, "What the hell?" It was Naruto, fully recovered, who emerged as the dust settled. Luxus, Urza, and Mira watched in wonder as he appeared unconcerned by what had just transpired. Additionally, there was a minor variation in his facial features. His eyes once more. It was blue at first, then black with red slits, and now it has an orange outline and toad. Like eyes that are pure orange. Senin Modo. Sage mode. On the sidelines immediately after the dust settled from Naruto's previous roaring attack, Natsu, Gray, and Fried all moved to the sidelines. They had hoped to get a front-row seat to what was likely one of the most amazing matches in the Mage Mash's history. They realized they weren't the only ones who wanted to fight as they got down to business. With the exception of Mistgun, almost the whole guild had descended from the stands to observe the fight up close. It wasn't every day, after all, that a black horse appeared out of nowhere and began engaging their S-class mages in equal combat. Natsu yelled, "Old man, Lasana," upon seeing his close friend and boss. Since they had hatched happy from an egg many years ago when they were still young, Lasana and Natsu were actually closer than most people, meaning Naruto, realized. That actually made them his parents. Fortunately, Naruto doesn't need to hear that explanation because he would likely interpret it incorrectly. Her flurry of inquiries and criticism left him unsure of how to respond. "Natsu, how are you? Are you okay? You shouldn't have done that. Luxus isn't some wild animal, you know. He'll counterattack you." She began taking his temperature, asking him if he was feeling lightheaded and other such questions, much to the amusement of everyone in the vicinity. Makarov chuckled as he observed the fight unfolding closely and said, "Ahahaha, I think that's quite enough, Lasana. Chan." He found it quite strange to watch because everyone had been more interested in Naruto than Gildarts, but the entertainment was still available. "Master, about Naruto's," began Fried, unsure of how to begin the discussion. Because of the earlier confession, he was very curious about his abilities. The stadium ground was carved into a massive crater by the confession, which was a strong, magically enhanced roar. Everyone became curious when he said, "Yeah, I don't really know much about his powers as a whole, but I know his teacher. Natsu's master and now missing surrogate father, Ignil, had taught him a variety of things, including letters and cultures, in addition to butt-kicking Dragonslayer moves." The old bedtime ghost story is probably familiar to some of you. Half of the guild gasped, some in comprehension and some in awe of the Tridantes of the West. "Really?" Kina asked out loud, causing everyone to give her strange looks. "You were a member of his team. How come you were unaware?" Makarov deadpanned at her, causing her to sulk and her features to flush. Hearing background laughter, she confessed, he would always say something like, my, that's my little secret Kana. Chan. And then prance around to change the subject. And it would work every single time. From the back, Lucky added, somewhat embarrassed by her ignorance of their teammates, not to mention he never really tries too hard on missions. Sometimes, it feels like he's on autopilot or something. With a somewhat disheartened tone, the older man lectured, "Ma, you two should really try to get to know him better." The comment caused Kana to sigh. Her eyes softened as she defended, "That's not the problem, he just doesn't like talking about himself for some reason." "Who am I to pry?" Since Gray was close by, she didn't want to bring up Deliora because she knew that he would become depressed at the mere mention of the monster. Another guild veteran, Macau, quickly said, "Forgetting all that, how goes the fight?" Not wanting the ostensibly enjoyable conversation to turn sour. When they joyfully forgot the previous tone, they were satisfied. With her brother Elfman nodding in agreement from the side, Lasana said, "Naruto is stepping it up, it seems. What's up his eyes though? It's like his base aura just changes in an instant when they change. Blue was his regular base form, black was his sinister form, and now it's orange outlines. Weird." Since they were all mages themselves, it had actually been clear to them. They still don't know exactly what it all means in the end, though. Makarov ruffled her hair and said, "Indeed, good observation, Lasana. Chan." The young teen blushed and smiled. "Master, what was up with the explosion a second ago? I wasn't really paying attention," Gray says quietly. "No need to be ashamed, my boy. Naruto's magic is very tricky. As you can see, even my grandson was fooled. You see, he has the ability to command shadows and jump into them as well. I assume that between our world and another, there's a void world. You see, after his roaring attack, Naruto created a clone and leapt into its shadow to rest while we were not looking." Halfway through his explanation, he noticed that almost everyone was lost and simply sighed. The Naruto that was struck by Mira and Urza was actually a clone whilst he lay safe within its shadow. "It's better if you guys just watched." They all gave a nod and carried on. Returning to the battle from his position, Gildarts observed calmly as Naruto opened his orange eyes with horizontal slits. Because the boy kept surprising people, he had given him a lot of amusement. It was quite amusing to observe. With silent delight, he thought to himself, it's like watching a manga. In contrast, Naruto gave himself a mental pat on the back for his quick thinking. Entering the shadow world, as he called it, he was able to enter sage mode quickly and easily. It was a very small amount, but it would have to do because, after all, there wasn't much natural energy in the other world. Why don't you utilize my chakra at any point? If the situation hadn't been so serious, Naruto could have laughed at the fox's apparent innocence and mental pout. Since they aren't attacking me with deadly force, why should I? He retorted, causing the fox to snort and withdraw back into its cage to watch the show with what appeared to be popcorn. Naruto sighed in his head. Even though he was unaware of it, the fox was becoming more and more human. All right, let's move forward. He overheard Luxus say this as he charged, his body infused with lightning like Natsu's fire, but Naruto was ready. Naruto dodged Luxus's attack by forming a tiny sphere of energy in his hands and slamming it into him. Rasengan. Spiraling sphere. Luxus was forced to temporarily stop his attacks in order to rest after the attack sent him flying back. Fortunately, Urza and Mira were still behind him, preparing to leap like a lion would at its impending meal. Get his attention, I'm going all out. Urza nodded and closed her eyes in momentary focus as he heard Mira whisper to her. Yoroi no Tenrin. Heaven's wheel armor. Suddenly, she was wearing a white mail with wings on the back instead of her typical Heart Cruise attire, and a whole warehouse of swords appeared to be glaring at him menacingly behind her. With half-lidded eyes, Naruto dutifully replied, "That looks interesting. Dance with my swords." She raised her two primary single-handed swords and gave the order for them to charge at the blonde. Swords in circles. With a sly smile, Naruto raised his hands in attack, and a rune circle materialized directly in front of them, resembling a summoning circle. Falvern. Yoryu no Subeda. Night Dragon's sword. Falvern. Something dark material materialized in his hands, transforming into a short, double-edged sword with an overall, apparently gloomy aura. Urza was forced to jump back as he swiftly swatted down all of her swords, charged her at breakneck speed without even pausing for a second, and used his bare fist to break through her signature armor with relative ease. "Fuck it, Mira, how much longer?" she asked hastily. She responded with a grunt, channeling all of her magical energy into her soul. 15 more seconds. That is excessively lengthy, Urza worriedly thought as Naruto began to approach slowly and then sidestepped a sliver of lightning before Luxus leapt from behind and attacked him with an apparently never-ending stream of lightning strikes. As the other teenager launched a full-scale attack on Naruto, the redhead exhaled with relief. Luxus is back. "Okay, I'm prepared," Mira exclaimed, her magical powers suddenly jumping a whole notch. Crouching her knees, she put her arms in a X-like formation. Visible energy was enveloping her in a black light as soon as that began. Satan Soul. On the sidelines as Lasana watched her beloved older sibling take control of her inner demon, she muttered, "Sister is getting serious now." Kana slapped Elfman over the head after he said out loud, "Yup, I wonder if he can take it like a man." As the fight progressed to the next level, she yelled, "Now's not the time to start that crap. It's getting good." Returning to the battle when the aura subsided, Mira appeared in what most people would recognize as her devil mode, complete with wings, a tail, and a scar on her right eye that accentuated her demonic appearance. "Baby, let's start this party." As she shot into the air, she began to gather what appeared to be a huge volume of water from the atmosphere, seemingly out of nowhere, and held it aloft to hit the blonde. "Why am I experiencing deja vu here, Ma?" Naruto said, observing the astounding volume of water in the sky. Gaito Mizu. Water stunt. As Naruto leapt to escape the magic-filled torrent, water filled the main stadium. He sighed, landed cleanly on the water's surface using his old-fashioned shinobi skills, and looked around to see where the others were. He saw that Urza was balancing on her sword, which was now piercing the arena wall. Luxus was hanging onto the stadium ledge, apparently unharmed, and Mirajane was flying. However, Gildarts had remained in his place, and Naruto widened his eyes and winced cautiously to examine his position. What is he doing? Simply put, the water is avoiding him, as if the whole place belongs to him and it simply moves around him. I can't tell what the difference is, but damn, it looks a lot like Shinra Tensei. Almighty push, indeed. Gildarts was unfazed by the situation and lounging in what appeared to be his own private bubble underwater. "Are you able to walk on water?" Mira frowned and asked from above. "Yes, it is very helpful," he answered. He glanced over and noticed that the fight was already approaching the 10-minute mark. Not wanting to waste any more time, he collected what little natural energy he still had. "Hey, I don't want to continue to drag this argument. Let's get this over with." He put his hands in the rat hand seal and dropped his sword. The shadows behind him abruptly burst from the earth and spread out in the direction of Mira, who was in the sky. Yoryu no Nui. Night Dragon Sewing. Astonished by the abrupt declaration and assault, She quickly swerved to avoid every shadow thread by a few inches. She repeatedly shifted from left to right and up to down before becoming alarmed when Naruto developed a sinister grin. I learned this from an old friend of mine. Now you're in my trap. After looking around, she realized that everything she had done was actually placing her in the middle of the assault. Now encircled, she attempted to destroy the webbing by releasing a demonic beam. It was unsuccessful because Naruto's attack was able to ensnare her tightly after the attack was abruptly absorbed into the void. She was immobile. Damn. The more she struggled, the more she felt her energy drain away. Mira could only observe the heavy draining of her magical power. Don't forget about me. Urza slammed a freshly equipped two-handler down at him, roaring from the side. Naruto escaped the attack by releasing his shadows and letting Mira slowly sink to her death in the miniature lake she had made. And then there was 3. But man, for you guys to force this form to such an extent was beyond my expectations. I'm almost out of nature to use, it seems, he said loudly. Well, you are definitely beyond most of us. Why did you hide your skills? Urza said loudly. Naruto gave a shrug. The master intervened before the fight could continue after he said, Dunno, never felt the need to show it. When he declared, Mirajane is unable to continue. That is the end of part 1 of this match. 5-minute intermission. The crowd's nerves began to break. Luxus jumped to the box where the others were and let out a sigh of relief. Gildarts walked slowly to the sidelines, content that he still had nothing to do. Already? I haven't even moved yet, he thought. On the sidelines as he was ready to leave, Mikao said, Woo! Break time. I'm getting some popcorn. Anyone want some? And nodded when he noticed that 4 other people had followed his instructions. Lasana exclaimed, Wow, I can't believe sister was beaten so easily. Natsu concurred with her in passing. Fried responded to her comment by saying, Indeed. Even though she wasn't going all out, it seems the same goes for Naruto. Alongside Naruto inhaled deeply and started to collect his thoughts, allowing his Sage Mode to fade. He had to use Sage Mode and some of his Dragon Slayer skills in just 10 minutes. Like his friend Shikamaru, he began rewinding the fight in his mind and coming up with a list of strategies to employ. Gildarts hasn't done anything yet. Luxus and Urza both appeared a little exhausted. What should I do? If my energy is too low, I can't fight Gildarts. I can't use it, because that would be a bit excessive, and if Tridantes ever caught me using it now, he wouldn't let me hear the end of it when we next meet. Since you don't want to be unconscious after the fight, the Demon Cloak is out of the question. Regular Dragon Slayer moves will have to do for the time being, I suppose. In any case, I haven't shown them much yet. He thought, well, I suppose it's time to unleash the inner monster. You mean it? With no shame at all, the Kyuubi sulked and yelled. No. When the fox growled at him, Naruto laughed and mentally responded, I meant it figuratively. Oi! The blonde snapped out of his reverie, tilted his head, and noticed a flash of pink. Natsu, he thought. He waved, Yo. What prevented you from telling me that you were a Dragon Slayer? His tone was unusually solemn, and Naruto's eyes softened. I apologize, kid. I had several reasons. The problem is that, although I am aware that the dragons vanished, I am unsure of their location. I didn't want to raise your expectations. Natsu nodded, understanding his purpose, but he wasn't quite ready to give up just yet. And another reason was mainly because I wanted the upper hand in the tournament, he said. Well, where did you last see your master? I might be able to locate a clue. Igneel must be found. Naruto looked into his eyes and saw a familiar frame, one of desperation, the other of Waria and the blonde's side. It was always my main purpose to find my surrogate father, Natsu told him. They were very similar when it came to solving problems. Well, what about this? We'll visit the ruins of the Dark Knight and take a look around a week following this competition. I cannot guarantee you anything, but why not use it to find your friend? Natsu nodded in satisfaction, grateful to the older teen because he had trouble finding leads because dragons are regarded as myths. Thanks, dude, and you're amazing. I still can't make my roar that powerful. The atmosphere abruptly changed, and Natsu returned to his normal self. Thanks, indeed. What do you think about me helping you train? Natsu nodded quickly, seizing every opportunity to gain strength and swoop down on Luxus's arrogant face. Nice. He glanced at the time and saw Urza and Luxus making their way back to the arena. All right, time to return inside. Natsu, I'll see you later. Battlegrounds. When Naruto returned to the field, he immediately noticed that there was no water, which was not surprising given that the area had been filled like a lake the last time he had seen it. He also noticed a large hole to his far right, which he assumed was caused by the master in order to remove the miniature lake. Naruto, Urza, Luxus, and Gildarts will continue their elimination match. Arrivals prepared. They all gave a nod, and Makarov obliged by announcing the beginning of the game. Leave. A sliver of lightning was heard shooting in space without even a second's warning. Naruto was astonished that it wasn't aimed at him, but luckily, when he looked again, he saw that it was headed for Gildarts, whose face was still smiling. The man simply eyed the bolt and waved it off casually, sending it skyward. "Ah, I guess I'll have to fight now." Gildarts laughed and muttered. "Well, that answers my question." Luxus smirked and said, "I don't feel like making the punk over their fight 2-on-1. Naruto wasn't upset by the development at all. On the contrary, he welcomed it. Urza nodded as the blonde turned to the side. "You and I are at odds." Luxus wanted to fight Gildarts. The blonde let out a sigh of relief and chose to fight Gildarts alone. He saw Luxus nod gratefully at him as he ran to the opposite side of the arena. "Now, finally, it's time to reveal who I am to Magnolia No, the entire world. I am Fairy Tail's Luxus Dreher." He clapped his hands together and gathered all his strength to battle the man he respected the most, aside from his own grandfather, because he was determined to be the best. "With Urza and Naruto, are you ready?" Naruto asked, cautiously glancing at Urza. He nodded, wondering what she wanted to say. "Before we start, I want to ask you something. Who exactly are you?" His face contorted in bewilderment at the question, which was probably the strangest one to ask him because no one ever really cared about it. The last person to ask him that was himself. "What are you saying?" "My name is Naruto Uzumaki, blonde, blue-eyed, 5 feet 11 inches and extremely attractive," he jokingly said. "I did not mean that. I was curious about your identity, home, hobbies, and such," she added apathetically, further perplexing Naruto with the question's content. "Well, I was a little alone coming from the west. Hobbies? I suppose I enjoy training." Urza nodded as he cheerfully added, "Oh, and I like ramen." "I see. Was that really that hard?" He was not sure what she was trying to say. "What? Tell me about yourself, please. Was that really that hard?" He came to a realization. "Are you angry that I kept my abilities a secret from you?" The red-haired teenager halted him and shook her head, saying, "I just wanted it to be a surprise." "That is irrelevant. Even though you're a really nice person, it seems like we don't know you. Even your teammates don't know you very well. I take it that we are a guild?" She posed a rhetorical question. "I see. I apologize if it seems that I have been inaccessible to you all, but I would prefer to keep my past to myself," he said, with a slight twinge of guilt. Naruto disliked keeping secrets, but in this new world, it was unnecessary. Nobody needed to know that he was one of the greatest shinobi of his era, that he had a demon inside of him, or that his past was a secret. He simply felt a sense of disgust at the thought. "There is nothing to apologize for, so that's okay. But keep in mind that our guild is a family." She grinned and told him what their guild master had once told her. "We share as much happiness as we do pain." Naruto returned her look and remarked, "Even though I have only been here for a little over a month, I've already begun to think of you all as my second home away from home. How stupid of me. I was completely unaware of it." "That's fantastic. Enough of this now. Get yourself armed." Naruto couldn't contain his laughter. It seemed like there was never a dull moment in this dimension. "Excellent." He called forth 2 weapons from the shadows with a snap of his fingers, just as he had done with his Falvern sword. Ryautu no Yoryu, the 2 swords of the Night Dragon. Tizona, a black and purple sword, encased in a multitude of cloths that seemed to symbolize its regal birth, materialized in front of him on his right. Colada, an inverse of the Tizona, a short blade a few inches longer than its partner the Tizona and significantly heavier than it appears, materialized in front of him on his left. Urza-san, I have to warn you. I have a lot of skill with the sword. I particularly enjoy dual wielding because it is as unpredictable as I am," he said, grinning, and Urza smiled back. "There are other people with an ace besides you." As her power level increased, she called forth her best armor, and her rune circle engulfed the area while screaming. Equip. Armor of Purgatory. Her other armor was abruptly replaced by a spiked, pure black one. "This armor has never been defeated by an opponent," she roared, beaming broadly. "Then I'll get past that strange, like all the other things that have been put in front of me." When Naruto faced her up close, he saw that her speed and power had significantly increased. It wasn't much of an improvement in his shinobi eyes, but it was still impressive, and he wanted to test her further to gauge her strength. Of course, he could have crushed her to the ground, but that wasn't necessary because they are comrades in arms. "You're doing fine." He spoke in a seemingly carefree manner, and Urza chose to growl rather than answer, her entire manner vanishing in the process. Her personality must be affected by the armor. What? I'm not surprised. I suppose I'll just get this done now. He crossed his two blades and closed his eyes in blink concentration, saying, "Sorry Urza.san, but I don't feel like playing anymore." When he opened his eyes again, they looked black. Odori no Yoryu. Dance of the Night Dragon. Calling forth his shadows to swallow his swords, he charged at her at full speed and launched his nightmare-like attack. Shotgun. In just 2 seconds, peels of her armor were tearing to the ground at a tremendous rate, and innumerable sword slashes were executed with such elegance that the audience felt lightheaded. Flash. Once her armor was gone, he stabbed his swords to the ground. Naruto crouched down to his knees and kicked her in the air, and without a moment to spare, he jumped up after her and delivered a magical enforced kick to her abdomen. The result ended with the red head flying towards the stadium walls in dead-ended speeds. As the dust cleared, she dropped to the floor with a thud. Unconscious. He muttered, "Ma, I hope she didn't get hurt too bad," and went back to his normal self. He tilted his head and noticed Luxus lying on the ground, gazing up at Gildarts, who appeared to be unharmed. About 30 seconds ago, Luxus was incredulous. Gildarts was still that far ahead of him despite his intense training and unwavering determination to achieve his objectives. The man didn't appear worn out, much less perspiring. He did nothing to him. As soon as it got close to him, all of his attacks were thrown away. Luxus was worn out. He had already lost most of his magic. Gildarts said, "You've gotten good, Luxus." The blonde snorted in response. Between breaths, he said, "Not good enough. Why are you so strong?" "Ma." He preferred to BS him rather than respond to those inquiries. He said, "Because I'm older than you." Then the gravity of the air knocked the teenager out. Alongside Naruto as he approached the older man, Naruto remarked, "Looks like you're done." Having made a clone to observe the battle in the dark, he scowled inwardly. The only conclusion was that he appeared to be able to make anything he touched simply crash. "You as well." He smiled and gave him the thumbs up, and Naruto smiled back at him. "Hey, you're pretty strong for a youngster. You're not bad for someone who's on the verge of a midlife crisis, and thank you." He simply accepted it without questioning whether it was an insult or a compliment. As the master descended and led Luxus and Urza to the infirmary, Gildarts remarked, "Well, looks like we got another 10-minute intermission." The two then went off to their separate resting places after saying, "Yeah, guess I'll see you then." Gildarts had not faced a true challenge in years, and although he appeared relaxed to the others, he still had the blood of a mage inside him, and he wanted a puzzle to solve. If they had turned around, they would have seen the excited grin that was displayed. And this child was strong. As they briefly left the arena, they both thought, "Let's see what you have, old man, kid." The idea of having a new Dragonslayer in Fairy Tail was the most talked about topic at the moment, with the crowd whispering to themselves. Uzumaki Naruto, the mage, had impressed everyone at the recent tournament by defeating 3 of Magnolia's best mages with relative ease, and now he was going to take on their best of the best. Legendary Gildarts cried, "Who do you believe will prevail?" Seemingly seeking attention, a random civilian yelled out. Indeed, Gildarts, another random civilian woman, confident in the old school, said, "That new guy is awesome and all, but old Gil is basically untouchable." There were some applause for the statement. "I don't know. That Naruto guy has been very surprising lately. I didn't even expect him to get past Evergreen." Mistgun, one of the many S-class magicians who had been induced into Fairy Tail over the years, was watching the tournament with interest while they were chatting among themselves. Of course, not many people talked about him, but that didn't bother him because he didn't like the spotlight, which he did for a variety of reasons. The masked man appeared to be perplexed by the blonde sage's identity and was lost in thought. "I have traveled to both worlds, but I have never once laid eyes on him. That energy, though, is all too familiar. Where else have I felt this? He might be dangerous, damn it. Thank you for keeping me occupied, Anima." After the mental tirade, he calmed down and scolded himself for his awful forgetfulness. He has amazing power. Unfortunately, Luxus is still too young to realize his actual level. The question now is, how close is Naruto to Gildarts? It's strange that his magical abundance just doesn't seem to end. It's like he's overflowing with magic. Gildarts and the master realize this as well. "Just who are you?" "Uzumaki Naruto." He sighed, having almost given up on his identity. Naruto is undoubtedly on that SS level, just like Gildarts. It wasn't too much of a shock given the way he handled those 3. "Maybe I should check the status of the Anima. It might tell me something." "Well, I'll do that after this fight. I want to see what Naruto can do against the man that can destroy a dark guild by simply sleepwalking." He was literally joking. He simply watched contentedly after that, curious about the strength of his new friend and, unbeknownst to him, greatest ally. Alongside Naruto, Naruto, a voice cried, rousing the blonde from his state of battle readiness. He developed the habit after fighting pain many years ago, and it was always his thing before a major battle. He waved, Kana. Yo, was up? But his eyes widened when she abruptly jumped him. From the rear, Lucky was laughing as she observed her friend's antics. She grinned so broadly that she exclaimed, "Why didn't you tell us, man? You were off the chain back there." "Ma, I wanted to surprise everyone. I am quite well known for that." He laughed. Naruto simply shook his head at her, saying, "Well, tell us that. I was kinda worried when you were down for a second." She nodded her head and said, "It's only a tournament, Kana-chan. You don't have to worry about crap like that." The tension in the air nearly made her forget that the tournament was merely enjoyable. However, it vanished the moment Luxus was defeated, and now it's just the same old amiable Gildarts. Laughing sheepishly, Kana said, "Sorry, and for giving you that crap about don't get your hopes too high." He waved his hands dismissively and told her, "Ma, it was to be expected. No apologies necessary. You didn't know my true powers, so it was to be expected." He eyed both of his teammates and thought, "I won't hold out anymore. I promise." He wanted them to be happy, and they were. Lucky asked from above, "So how do you plan on fighting Gildarts?" She naturally didn't think he would have a strong one because of his extremely limited understanding of Gildarts. Despite her expectation that she would say, "None. I'll just wing it," she nevertheless proceeded to face Vault. Kana merely chuckled at his eagerness. He heard from the side, "Amazing, only a courageous man can jump into action without a plan." Naruto tilted his head and noticed two figures that he recognized. He waved at them and acknowledged, "Elfman, Lasana." He scowled and shook his head, saying, "Hello Naruto-san." Lasana nodded and smiled at him, saying, "Just Naruto will be fine. Hell, you can even call me Oni-chan, ahaha. He's changed," she thought. "Okay. Naruto.ni." His eyes slightly widened. She did say it. "I was kidding," he laughed in his head. With a hint of concern, he said, "Cool, so how's your sister?" "She's doing great. All you did was drain her magic, nothing too life-threatening," replied Elfman. Naruto gave them a sheepish glance. This time, Lasana responded, "That's good. How about Urza and Luxus?" The statement made Naruto feel a little bad, but he chose to shrug and smile sheepishly instead. Luxus is still unconscious, not too surprising seeing as he did fight Gildarts. Urza. She has quite a few bruises. You did send her flying towards the wall twice, you know. Everyone laughed when he said, "I might have to apologize for that later, haha." He inhaled deeply and began to walk as he saw Gildarts heading back to the field. After hearing several cries of, "Good luck," he regained his strength and got ready to give the man in front of him his all. "Okay, it's time." Conclusion: Naruto vs Gildarts. There are 10 minutes left on the clock. Madison, ladies and gentlemen. Makarov stood up on the sidelines and shouted, "It was a pleasant experience to watch a complete enigma take down famous mages." The crowd gave him their full attention, impatient for the fight to start. The tournament was nothing but surprise after surprise when the new blonde showed up. The finale is here for you. The old and the new are engaged in combat. The young and the old, Naruto, the dragon of the West, has ascended from the bottom to the top. The man on top is now facing him. Even if he did do a good job at building up the tension, Makarov mentally laughed when he heard someone yell, "Get on with it." Both nodded, their eyes fixed on each other. "Competitors, are you ready?" he exclaimed. "Then let's get ready to party. Go," and instantly leapt out of the way as a huge gust of wind headed in Gildarts' direction. The veteran of Fairy Tail watched with interest as the single gust of wind split into 5 separate attacks that came at him from all directions. Futon. Shinkugan. Vacuum gun. He instantly deflected the first blast that came at him from the front without even trying to dodge, and he flicked both of his hands at once to divert the others that were coming at him from behind. The other two attacked him from entirely different directions in the nick of time. He brought the earth around him to protect him from the attack and tapped his foot to the ground, smiling. As the man noticed the blonde cautiously eyeing him, he thought, "Interesting approach." "In a rush, are we?" he mischievously asked. Naruto gazed in wonder at the man before him. "Okay. So he doesn't have a time skip like Pain's Shinra Tensei, almighty push. After all, he used his powers to make the earth crash into my attacks as well. But can he stay out of shadows?" Gildarts narrowed his eyes but continued to smile as he palmed his hands to the ground, tore the darkness from them, and began to feed ravenously. Naruto laughed and stopped his violent feeding, saying, I know Natsu eating fire is weird, but that was on the ground. He needed power to execute his next technique, so he brought his hands in front of him. Gildarts tensed slightly as he felt the sudden surge of magic. Nadare Yoryu. Night Dragon's avalanche. Suddenly, a great deal of darkness erupted from the stadium and shot in the direction of the veteran member, who appeared a little confused and raised his hands in a V, before doing something that startled Naruto. He broke up the attack into smaller parts. Even though the technique wasn't complete, his opponent didn't care. Naruto held off the attack for several minutes before releasing it and pulling back the shadows. With a neutral Gildarts in his eyes, Naruto cried, Damn! How do you do that? Is there anything that can touch you? Since the beginning of the fight, the man had not moved from his position. He smiled and said, Maybe, who knows? The boy was giving it a lot of thought. It's nearly too difficult. Then how about this? Naruto inhaled deeply and launched his trademark Dragon Slayer attack, exerting as much energy as he had the previous time. Yoryu no Hoko. Night Dragon's howl. As before, a fierce darkness began to engulf the region he hurled it in. With a sigh, Gildarts extended both hands once more. Crash. He refused to move, forming a tiny bubble inside the attack, and Gildarts watched. As the assault came to an end, Naruto saw that Gildarts was entirely encircled by debris. His surroundings remained unaltered. Despite his reluctance to acknowledge it, Naruto muttered, K. His magic is starting to lower. The other man continued to be forgiving of him. In addition to not moving, the man was astute enough to watch before retaliating. It brought back many memories of Shikamaru. Then it dawned on him, consider Shikamaru. Let's see if he can deflect this. Kage Bunshin, Shadow Clone. He called forth 6 clones and asked them to form a hexagon around Gildarts. As he witnessed the assault, the veteran wondered, Ooh, what's this? Did he come up with something? Gildarts pondered. I will have to thank to an old friend for giving me this idea. Kage Isha. Shadow Projection. From beside him, a tiny door opened. Gildarts eyed the projection warily and gave him a suspicious look. When Naruto saw this, he grinned. Ma, since you don't want to move, I'll make you. Attack him, clone number 1. Kun. He watched in horror as one clone hurled himself at mediocre speed, his perspiration dripping down at the name of his present assailant. The blonde clone leapt to his feet and punched him in the face. A blast of wind erupted from the clone's stomach and blasted at Gildarts with all of its might, just as he was about to destroy him as he edged closer. The older man was startled and sprang back, partially evading the attack, leaving a pile of craters where he had been. What the hell? Ah, I see. Very clever, he muttered after being ejected from his position at last. It's very tricky, very useful as well. Maybe I can take him with me on the 100-year mission, he thought, grinning. He put one of his clones' doors on and shot a wind attack into the other door besides him to project it at me. Gildarts became aware that he had finally been hit when he felt a stinging sensation emanating from his shoulders. Since he wasn't hurt as frequently as he was in his younger years, it was a nostalgic feeling. Naruto nodded, appreciating the compliment. Wow, you actually got me there. I'll admit, I haven't been injured in a long time. You are talented to have been able to pressure me. He heard Gildarts say, Thank you, Naruto. This confused him and the others in the crowd. Naruto questioned, Why are you thanking me? The older man laughed instead of laughing. This pain, it reminds me that I am still human. I guess there's no need to take it easy on you any longer. That is the least I could do to repay you. Now, we fight as equals, Gildarts exclaimed, removing his cloak to display the physique that had been amassed over countless years of intensive physical and mental training. The man's experience on the battlefield was evident from the numerous scars on his chest and abdomen. The audience was startled. The seemingly unbeatable Gildarts was actually harmed by the newcomer, Naruto, who appeared to be only around 15 years old. They all knew that Naruto was still holding back, even if it was only a minor scratch. On the sidelines, the guild watched in disbelief as their best mage winced in mild discomfort. As far as they were concerned, nobody had been able to do that except the master himself. Macau attempted, but was unable, to describe what he saw. Just now, the boy who appeared to be nothing more than a heap of surprise gave them another. He wouldn't have considered this to be possible just a few days ago. Even though Naruto appeared to be a regular B.To. a leveled mage, it was still impressive. But it was an unforgettable experience to watch him square off against one of the world's few SS-classed mages. Gazing at the blonde who was engaged in combat with admiration and reverence on his 14-year-old body, Gray remarked, He got Gildarts. And it was good. As Lucky looked at Kana, whose mouth appeared to be on the ground, he muttered, "He just winged it." It was a humorous sight. Yeah. Let them see the Dragonslayer's power. Nearly everyone in the stadium was startled awake by Natsu's scream, and as soon as it dawned on them, they all got up and began cheering enthusiastically. They were going crazy, yelling for the game to continue. Knowing what she wanted, Lucky nodded and followed Kana's lead as she snapped her head in her direction and met her eyes with intense passion. "Down there, that is our teammate." Yes. Makarov could only laugh. It was a truly enjoyable day as they boasted loudly to the audience. He hoped that would remain the case. Let's get back to the battle. Instead of feeling the crowd, Naruto focused on the future. He had finally figured out a way to fight him, but it was pretty pointless, and that wasn't the only issue because Gildarts had declared that he would no longer be taking it easy. "Well, I've figured out how to combat you, however, I never imagined it would be so challenging. I wish I had known Hireishin. Goddamn you, Dad, for making learning so difficult. What should I do since I don't have many techniques that let me do what I just did? The same trick won't fool him twice." With a serious voice that didn't seem to fit him, he heard Gildarts say, "Well, all good things must come to an end, I'm afraid." The floor began to shake as the man slammed his hands to the ground, causing Naruto's eyes to widen. He jumped to the safety of the wall as several dull spikes shot up and destroyed his clones. Gildarts said dutifully, "Good reflexes." Naruto felt another faint rumble behind him and shifted as he was almost swallowed by the floor. He ran to the opposite side of the building, closed his eyes, and opened them again as black. Kote no Yoryu. Night Dragon's flight. Ordering the darkness to swallow him, he abruptly transformed into a human-sized dragon. Kin. Like creature, swung his wings wide, leapt, and soared into the air to survey the arena covered in spikes. Earth. No, that isn't it. Then he felt a rush of energy coming, and he swerved to the left just in time to avoid an invisible airborne attack. Naruto's eyes widened as he realized what was happening. "There isn't any question. Do you have that power? Is it a crash?" At the blonde's abrupt question, Gildarts grinned and responded, sensing that everyone was watching him. "Perhaps." He then punched the air and threw a volley of invisible air pulses at him, saying, "Oh, and cool little transformation you got there." That's it, then. Rewinding the fight in his mind, he recalled how easily he spliced his winds. He can control the direction of the matter he comes in contact with. Matter can be anything. Me, the air, the ground, the sky, hell, even lava. But he needs to be in contact with it first. Just standing there gives him control over the ground and wind. Really, the question is, just how much can he control at a time? He looked at the clock and saw that the match was rapidly running out of time. "That doesn't help," he said. "I have 1 minute and 30 seconds left. If I use that technique, I might be able to beat him." He started to think about his last move while dodging the man's many attacks. "I'll put it to use." He closed his eyes and formed a X with his arms as he flew to the middle of the stadium, saying, "I have no reason to hide it any longer." Feeling the unexpected, amazing rush of energy, Gildarts decided to see what the child was up to. Naruto was consuming the darkness around him. "That's a hell of a lot of power he's absorbing." "Have you found him?" said a tiny, female voice. She was searching for a man her master wanted dead, somewhere in the center of Magnolia. One of her supporters responded with a sigh of relief, "Yes, he is at Fairy Tail as we speak." "Good, attack him. Kill Ivan Dreher now." "Understood, my lady." On the sidelines, Fried was keeping a close eye on the fight and asked, "He is gathering a huge amount of darkness. What is he up to?" From next to him, Natsu remarked, "I don't know, but it feels familiar." The mention caused Fried to raise an eyebrow. "What do you mean, Natsu?" "Well, when Dad was teaching me, he showed me one of the Dragonslayer's final form. I never had enough power to pull it off, but it feels so similar to what Naruto is doing now." Fried grinned. "What was this form called?" Natsu scratched his head, trying to think of a response but failing. With a face. "Vault," Fried said, "don't remember." "Oh well," he thought, chuckling to himself. "Zahahahaha, you taught him that?" An ecstatic Aphelion exclaimed. In the first place, Tridantes wasn't the kind of person who taught humans, and he never imagined that the man would actually teach a human such a strong move. As they observed the fairy tale ace, Tridantes remarked, he had the power to use it, but to even think of using it against a mere human. His opponent must be powerful. The blonde's quick thinking to land such a difficult tactic with his limited resources earlier impressed all the other dragons. They were now witnessing him transform into a form that most dragons in the lower tiers feared. With a faint chuckle, Aphelion said, He must have been one impressive pupil, after glancing at his brother. I only teach the best, ha ha ha. While skulking about the building, a man with a name said, he, stupid fairy tale won't know what hit them. Everyone in fairy tale was familiar with this name. After committing multiple crimes under his name, Ivan Draher was forced into exile. He was planning an ongoing retaliation after Makarov exiled him for his crimes many years ago. This man was and remains a sick, avaricious jerk. It was the worst of the worst. He ducked a blast of magic from behind him before he could say anything more. Now where is that document? He turned around and asked, "Who are you?" Only to smile when a woman wearing armor and half naked came cautiously toward him. He eyed her hourglass figure intently and said, "Why hello there. Now can you explain just why did you attack me just now?" Disgusted with the man she was asked to kill, the woman shook her head. "Ivan Draher?" she inquired, causing the man to smile slyly. Rather than responding, she released another magical burst that appeared to come from the wand she was holding. "Oh yes, that's me. How can I help you?" she asked. After saying, "Lord Hades has ordered your execution, now die," chaos ensued. Battle. When Gildarts looked up, he saw that Naruto had finished recharging but had remained in his position. He said, "Oi, what's wrong?" Concentrating, Naruto closed his eyes and let his wings spread out. He walked up slowly and opened his eyes, dropping to the ground as an angel of death would approach its target. The air began to sickle and wisp around him, enveloping his body like armor, and he thought, "This is the end." Gildarts looked at him warily because of his unexpected power. Up, but the darkness joined the winds and swallowed the blonde whole. Talk about a jump, his enchanted vitality simply exploded. "Let's get this done. Drago NFO. He was abruptly interrupted by an explosion that exploded in the distance. He quickly dropped his form and leapt to the arena roof, where he and all the other mage in the area leapt to see what was wrong. Their home away from home and parts of the town were on fire, and Naruto winced as he found a few of his clones by following the silhouettes from earlier. His anger growing, he muttered, "What the hell? What on earth is happening? What's causing our guild to burn?" From where he stood, he heard an angry whisper. "Master." Awaiting the old man's orders, the blonde called. "All right, fairy tale, to me." All of the members were suddenly in front of him, ready to obey his command. Everyone except Mistgun, Gildarts, and Naruto. "Evacuate the civilians first." They reluctantly nodded and went off to carry out their orders, most of them wanting to go check on their second home. "Keep them safe. Regarding the three of you, we're going to investigate the situation." The four of them were furious and extremely anxious as they leapt to the ground and ran at full speed in the direction of the guild. All of the offenders were going to pay, alongside Kana. Currently on her way to the infirmary to pick up her friends who had competed and lost in the tournament, Kana Alberona hurried so she wouldn't be late telling them of the dire situation. She rammed the door down without hesitation, waking up Urza, Mira, Evergreen, Bixlow, and Luxus right away. "What the devil? This is where I'm trying to sleep," Luxus cried out, upset about a lot of things right now. His reputation was tarnished because, in addition to being crushed by Gildarts, he was easily beaten in front of the entire city. "I don't have time for that. They are attacking the guild," she nearly screamed, startling the 2 B-class and 3 S-class mages. "What?" Urza screamed, which seemed unusual for her. "When did this occur?" Myra's eyes darkened significantly as she asked. "In the finals. Gildarts and Naruto were fighting when the explosion occurred. It's surprising that none of you woke up." Luxus shook his head. He seemed even more enraged than before as he explained, "This room is protected from outer sound waves so patients could get their sleep. There is no time to waste, damn it. What order did Gramps have?" Knowing that his grandfather most likely went to investigate the issue himself, Luxus inquired. He nodded at her and got to his feet, trembling slightly from his previous fight. He told Naruto, Mistgun, and Gildarts to come with him to the guild and ordered everyone else to keep the civilians safe. "I'm heading to the guild to support the Gramps." Bixlow, Evergreen, tracked down Fried and do as the master originally instructed. He gave them an order, but Evergreen resisted. "But, sir, you're still not completely recovered." When she told him, the blonde gave her a sneer. "I can handle a group of cowards without using my magic. Assaulting my house when it is helpless." Evergreen sighed and shook her head, nodding hesitantly before leaving before Urza could stop him. "I agree with him, even though it's reckless. Can you temporarily relieve my weariness, Kana?" Kana complied and pulled out one of her cards, saying, "I also want to go back up the master." Queen of Hearts. Magic cards. She proceeded to temporarily heal Urza while her Tetra card was glowing green. "I'm grateful. Mira and I are going to check on the guild now. With a hand on Kana's shoulders, Urza said, "Thanks for getting us." "All right, but exercise caution. You're not at your best, I can tell." "I'll be all right. Mira is with me here. Let's go now." With the intention of learning the truth, they quickly left the room. Magnolia's streets on their way to the guild, Naruto, Gildarts, Mistgun, and Makarov were all hit by unexpected bursts of energy. Each of them skillfully deflected the attack in their own way, and when a horde of armored mages surrounded them, they scowled. Mistgun. The masked man nodded, pulled one of his numerous staffs from his back, and waved it at them as Makarov spoke as though giving a coded order. Somber array. Unsettling shadows. The enemies were ravaged by a dark magical energy that oozed from his staff, and Gildarts' subtle crashes befell the few who managed to escape. "Who are these individuals? Unfamiliar with their attire?" Naruto asked. "They are members of the Valkyries, a group of skilled killers who are employed directly by the Dark Guilds." Makarov muttered as he gazed at the soldiers who were unconscious, "But I heard that they became exclusive recently." "Exclusive? To whom?" Gazing at his master, Naruto asked. The four turned around when they heard a voice behind them say, "Grimoire Hearts." Tayuya, Naruto's partner, was flying with wings when they saw a flash of blue and white. "Tayuya. Hold on, are you familiar with them?" The Exceed landed on his shoulders after nodding and pulling back her wings. "As a bard, I have a lot of friends, if you will, so I know a lot of things that most people don't." She told them, her face etched with seriousness. "There have been a lot of rumors circulating about the Assassins of the Dark, or Valkyries as you call them, becoming exclusive to the Dark Guild called Grimoire Hearts. You essentially have a network of spies?" With a hint of amusement, Gildarts said, and Tayuya just chuckled at the phrase. "Network of spying? Heavens no, a gossip club, perhaps," she responded with delight, drawing an odd expression from Naruto. "So, Tayuya has a network of spies? That is astonishing. This is fantastic. However, I doubt it's comparable to the extremely well organized Arrow Senin Spy Club. It's better than nothing, though." Tayuya-chan, we really need to discuss these issues. However, this is not the moment. Come on. Not wanting to waste any more time, he said. As he eyed another explosion coming from the distance, Makarov said out loud, "Indeed, who knows how many of them are left." Without further delay, the four mages ran toward the blast, conversing as they went. As they ran, Naruto called out, "Master." "Yes, Naruto?" "Who are the hearts of the grimoire?" The blonde asked him in a professional tone. "I heard it somewhere on one of my missions, but I never bothered to check it out." "The continent's most well-known Dark Guild. You are aware of what a Dark Guild is, correct?" After meeting a few members of Dark Guilds on missions, Naruto nodded, and Kana went on to explain what Dark Guilds were in detail. Unlawful guilds. The ones that disbanded but continued to operate in other ways. The council refers to them as criminal organizations. The elderly man nodded. "Do you know what the Balam Alliance is?" Naruto frowned at the strange term and shook his head. "Given that you've only recently become involved in guild affairs, it's not shocking." The master sighed, and Naruto's eyes widened at the sound of it. The Balam Alliance is a union of dark guilds. And at its core is Grimoire Hearts. They're without a doubt the continent's most potent dark guild. The whole thing sounded to Naruto like a planned war, and as a former Hokage and shinobi, he expected it to happen soon. How troublesome, he said, feeling a headache coming his way. "We'll discuss this at a later time. We've arrived," Gildarts remarked as they cautiously approached the scene, where they were met with the sight of innumerable corpses strewn across the ground. Makarov looked around in horror and spotted a very familiar face. Recognizing it, Gildarts gave an unusual growl. He narrowed his eyes and muttered, "Ivan." The man turned around and his eyes widened. "Hi there, Gildarts. Is the master also present?" "Sup, Pops?" The man had the same aura as a certain pale, sinister, and sickening villain from his world, and Naruto couldn't help but feel a burning nostalgic anger building inside him as he said this with so much sarcasm in his voice. He made him think of Sanin Orochimaru. Furthermore, who are these three? "You must be the Mistgun, I see." "Pleasure." The masked mage merely gave him a wary glance. "Oh, and the Dragon of the West must be you. And what is this? Do you have that excess with you there? Fascinating." Naruto noticed that Tayuya had stiffened, but he chose to know later rather than ask. "Why in the world are you here?" Ivan laughed as Gildarts said this angrily. "It appears that I am not welcome here." "Well, whatever, this whole thing was a failure. That old fool sent mere Valkyries to kill me, something I never expected. Hell, the boss herself wasn't even sent." After a moment of hesitation, He let out a dramatic sigh and said, "Well, this has been a nice reunion. I'll be going now." He tilted his head and glanced at the woman from earlier, who was battered and covered in blood. "Well, I've enjoyed it. You're A-class at best, but not bad. No match for me at all." Gildarts sent a barrage of wind attacks in his direction just as he was ready to depart, and the attack exploded right in front of him, leaving a great deal of dust in its wake. "Don't assume you can simply flee." When the wind subsided, only air was visible, the fairy tale ace remarked. "Gosh." Makarov stopped Naruto just as he was ready to go look for him. "No, there are more crucial tasks to complete. Mist gun. Put out the fire. Gildarts and you, Naruto, capture any Valkyries you come across." They obeyed the order, nodding, and Makarov silently swore as he watched them go. "I'll collect these bodies. Ivan, that wretched idiot. How will I tell Luxus about this? Telling him that his father is among the world's worst criminals hurts me. My son, damn you to hell." Weary, he changed into a giant and began sweeping the bodies, intending to hand them over to the police the following day for questioning. The following morning Makarov shook his head and lectured them about limits, but Urza, Mira, and Luxus were reluctant to comply when the master told them to leave the other roaming assassins to Gildarts and Naruto because they also wanted to join in. Ultimately, all they were able to find was their master gathering the bodies of beaten mages. It was morning now, and everyone was exhausted, both mentally and physically. Gildarts had been very serious since the confrontation, but he quickly reverted to his previous personality. Naruto gazed at the now cricked building with some sadness, but he shook it off because he knew it could be easily rebuilt. The fact that his match with the older man would not be completed for the time being also disappointed him. As he looked around at the now dispersed members, he thought, "Ah well, can't get everything you want." The majority had gone home to check on their families, while others had just gone to relax. He sighed and said, "What a day." "Yes." Makarov, who appeared older than he should have, said, "We have a lot of work to do." Before the master intervened, Naruto was about to make clones to clean the building when he said, "Yeah," and cracked his neck. "You've already put in a lot of effort. Naruto, go back home and rest. Additionally, I don't believe that little Tayuya is at ease sleeping on your shoulders. It has been verified that the Exceed dozed off in the middle of the night the other day, shortly after he and Gildarts had completed apprehending escaped assassins." Agreed. Naruto said goodbye to his master and headed home, where he suspected his landlords were actually mages in disguise. Strangely, the fire had spread that far, but it didn't appear to have caused any damage. "No way, no way." Two figures appeared in a dimly lit room. An elderly man who was stroking his beard, as most elderly men do when they approach senility, and another who was wearing a full black outfit with a hoodie sweater to effectively conceal his face in the shadows. So they didn't succeed? Without a trace of surprise or rage, the older man spoke in a spectral voice. The man didn't even bother to pretend he didn't want to be here. His response was brief and rather boring. "Yes. I understand. That was anticipated. You wouldn't listen, even though I could go on and on about how foolish it was to send such a weak squad. Anyhow, am I finished here? I have a lot of work to do. People to threaten, women to amuse, and targets to murder. Much better than hanging around here talking to you, some old, shabby man." The elderly man gave him a subtly angry look. "What a show of disrespect. I would kill you now, you arrogant brat, if you weren't so strong. I demand respect because I am the ship's lord." The younger, hooded man laughed as he practically yelled. "You have to earn respect. Men like you are not respected by me. I've got to leave now. I think my lady has had enough of me. Before your jerk messenger showed up, she was very close." The younger man smirked and turned it back on him, his eyes turning blood red with black slits. But the elder man sent a huge wave of killer intent at him just as he was about to leave. "Be careful next time. I don't want to kill another of your lackeys." "Geez, you believe I'm afraid of you? Hades, the old man. They refer to me as a demon of hell, even though they call you a god. I have slain gods much more fierce than some old flesh bag like you," he said, and departed. With a dismaying sigh, the elderly man took a seat. Why are weapons so hard to control? Magnolia Streets. Naruto saw a lot of looks from the civilians as he strolled through Magnolia's streets. Though he was accustomed to it, it was a wonderful feeling to be recognized in a positive way. They were all full of respect and admiration. Since he did battle Gildarts on an equal footing for a while, every mage he had passed nodded in recognition as well. Slowly, 3 days had gone by since the competition. The town had been undergoing some changes as a result of the damage caused by the many explosions that had taken place. With the aid of Naruto's clones and Lucky's wood magic, the guild was easily repaired, houses were being rebuilt, and parks were being refined again. Not that the Jinchuriki cared, but a few days ago the detained Valkyries and their captain were handed over to the council for questioning. Naruto had no idea where or how long Guildarts had been exhibiting signs of leaving. However, based on his remarks following the tournament, it would be for a while. The blonde sighed. If he wanted to complete the match that had begun on the night of the Mage Mash, he would have to wait. Additionally, Luxus had been behaving strangely lately, constantly nodding off when someone tried to talk to him. He eventually gave up trying to solve the older teen's issue. The brooder was not the first thing Naruto had to deal with. Master called for a guild meeting today, probably wants to address the incident. Forgetting that. I guess it's a good time to bring Natsu to the ruins later as well. It should be a 10-day trip. Now's a good time to use those vacation hours I got for participating in the MASH. Naruto smiled broadly. Since his offer that day, the young dragon slayer had been persistently pestering him about training, constantly requesting assistance with his dragon roar and other things. When the rosy-haired boy was properly focused, he was an excellent student. A voice from his shoulders said, "Naruto." He cocked his head to look into Tayuya's eyes. She had told him about being referred to as an exceed, but it seemed to stop there because she was hesitant to talk about her past. Naruto understood her obvious reluctance and nodded. There are some things that are simply meant to remain in the past. Yes, Tayuya-chan. You mentioned something about going to the ruins of the Dark Knight with that other Dragon Slayer boy, right? She inquired. She appeared to be thinking about something as she closed her eyes and said, yes, he wanted to search for some clues on finding Ignil. Why do you ask? She replied in a businesslike tone, demonstrating her seriousness. There have been terrifying rumors spreading in that region. An informant of mine sent me a message that detailed all the information that was spreading. Naruto's eyes widened with curiosity. After reading it earlier, she sighed and chose to share the information. And what are these rumors? She asked. She began, but Naruto interrupted her right away, saying, it's hard to explain. It seems rumors of euthanasia being a practice there have been spreading. He dutifully responded, not finding the rumor intriguing. Is that weird? Where I come from, elder folks who were deemed unsurvivable were willingly euthanized. Some even went happy. Naruto felt compelled to interrupt her after she said, let me finish. I meant that people have been performing euthanasia on others, with or without their consent. With a slight frown, Naruto retorted, why are you making it so complicated? Isn't murder a better term to use than unwilling euthanasia? With a sigh, Tayuya simply handed him the paper. He picked up the information, read it, and his eyes widened at what he saw. He pocketed the paper for later use and thought, unbelievable. Even in this world, where things seem so bright. I guess I have grown slightly complacent since I've been here. He walked more quickly to the guild to get an early start for the day, shaking his head in disgust. The exceed nodded and let out a satisfied sigh. Tayuya, we're going to inform the master. He must know about this. A flying ship drifted mystically, as if it were eternal, in the endless, far skies. Like it was hiding from enemies below, the enormous transport flew near the clouds. Two Figurisa, one real and the other holographica, were standing inside the ship, appearing to be speaking to each other. With a patient demeanor, the man in the hologram asked, is it ready? His black outfit and hoodie appeared to effectively conceal his face. On his right shoulder, the hooded man also had a crest that appeared to be a one-way shoulder pad. The words, Judem, were boldly printed on the crest. This woman, who had silky red hair and glasses that seemed to fit her delicate features, was kneeling with her face to the floor as if in complete submission as she said, yes sir, we are currently looking into it as a matter of fact. She was wearing a white coat with a crested spiral sign on the front, which signified her position as the head of her division. Excellent, it is crucial that you call him here as well. He is my top general, just like you. Ursane, please start working now. He said, if you succeed, I might even pay you a little visit later. However, she blushed profusely, so there was no subtle hint of that. Yeah, my lord, anything for you. She talked a little too quickly, which caused the holographic figure to laugh a little. All right, that's it for now. With great disgust, he said, that old fool Hades is calling me for an assignment. The redhead nodded and got back up on his feet. I get it. After saying, by your leave, my lord, the man vanished from his position, and Ursane, the now identified woman, walked out the door without saying anything more. As though the discussion had never taken place. The fairy tale when the blonde saw his renewed guild, he marched in quickly and looked around for his master. He walked down the streets with a little more urgency in his springs. Makarov saw him and grinned, waving at the blonde casually. Hi, Naruto. Why are you here so early when the meeting hasn't even begun? The elder man gave Naruto a puzzled look as soon as he whispered to him, "Master, I have dire news." "How are you?" Naruto pointed to the door behind them and shook his head. "We should speak in the rear." When the old man realized his tone, his face abruptly became serious. "Tayuya has an interesting piece of information to share." He walked to the back door and checked to make sure no one was listening in while they spoke. "What have you got?" He pulled out a piece of paper and let the old man read it. Makarov shook his head and sighed when he was done. "Only 5 hours ago, this rumor was verified. Bob, the guildmaster of Blue Pegasus, called me. Due to a minor circumstance that has been occurring lately, he requested some backup." The man's voice was worn out. "I was going to send your team, which is ironic." Knowing what the old man was implying, the blonde grinned to herself. "This is ideal, since Tayuya.san over there has an informant nearby, so you can get some additional info." "Don't you understand what this means?" Naruto. With delight, the young sage nodded. "I don't have to have that conversation anymore." He thought kindly to himself. "It appears that my performance in the tournament has increased my credibility. All right, I won't even try to give you a hint. The Council of Mages has decided to raise your status to S-class in recognition of your performance in the tournament." He patted the younger man on the back and said, "You will be able to take S-class missions from now on." "Well done." He decided to ask him a question after nodding. "I intended to announce this just before informing them of Guildarts' long-term mission. Will these S-class missions allow me to bring my teammates with me?" The man nodded and sighed. "Yes. Luxus was the only S-class mage in the Reigenshu when he was its leader. You need at least one S-ranked mage to take on such a mission, and the others must be above B-class. Fortunately for you, Kana and Lucky meet the requirements." She shook her head, clearly unconcerned with what people thought of her. "No offense, Tayuya. The council didn't bother with you because they didn't really know you could use magic." "I don't care." "Cool," said Naruto. "All right, now." He tossed a folder of papers at him, which the blonde easily caught. "Here's your first assignment. You're supposed to report to Bob at the Blue Pegasus Guild. He will give you a detailed explanation of the situation. As Team Otherworld's leader, I anticipate that you will debrief Kana and Lucky." Naruto nodded and grinned at the man. Makarov nodded to him, pleased with his response. "I won't let you down, boss." "Naruto, you are now an inspiration to the kids in this city. You are now to the young sorcerers what Urza is to the young sorceresses. Anticipate being harassed by paparazzi at any moment." Naruto laughed at the joke and started to walk away before recalling his pledge. "Whoa." Makarov shook his head. "I promised Natsu that I would take him to the ruins of the Dark Knight. He is unable to accompany you, Naruto. Despite his strength, the boy lacks the maturity to manage an S-class mission. You already have Kana and Lucky's sanity to worry about." The blonde sighed and gave in. "You don't need Natsu on your hands as well. How about this, then? I can use my vacation time once the mission is over, right?" He gave a nod. "After I let you know that the mission is finished, may you then send Natsu to Blue Pegasus? It's only a 10-hour train ride from here to there, if I'm correct. He'll go to the ruins and back with me. The place is empty, so it won't take long." Makarov shot him a sardonic glance. "You're not really sure, are you?" He talked slowly. "What?" With a subtle shift, Naruto asked. The blonde nearly burst out laughing when he said that Natsu has a chronic motion sickness issue. He had no idea. Makarov nodded and said, "Oh well, he'll have to deal with it." "Very well, I'll tell him. I'm grateful. By your leave, then. I have to leave to get ready for the mission." The elderly man brushed him off and went on. "Getting new gears and such. The meeting is in 30 minutes, Magnolia's streets." Naruto had a noticeable bounce in his step as he walked out of the building to find an equipment shop, happy to have received his promotion at last, since he had entered the tournament for that reason alone. "So, what are you going to do?" Tayuya inquired while they were strolling. "We'll solve it, but it's a mystery. We're leaving as soon as the master concludes the meeting." They walked silently to the nearby armory shop, a medium-sized home with traditional sliding doors, and upon entering, he was greeted by the intriguing sight of Kana, Lucky, and Urza all together. "Oh," he caught their attention by saying it out loud. "How are you two today, Naruto and Tayuya?" Urza was the first to say this, casually waving at her friend, who smiled back at them. Tayuya dutifully said, "I am fine." Then she turned to face Naruto, who went on. "All right. I'm just here replenishing my equipment. How about the girls?" It was Kana who responded from the side this time. "Well, you see. Here, Urza needed assistance choosing armor." With a sheepish head scratch, the brunette told him, "I don't really know anything about armor, so I have no idea why she called me here. Naruto laughed and approached her, giving her a gentle pat on the back. Ah well, it's the thought that counts. She grinned and nodded before moving aside to give Lucky a wave and a smile. So, do you know the purpose of the meeting? The teenager with the violet hair asked, her face adjourning innocently. Earlier today, I spoke with the master. He claimed it had to do with guild arts or something. Urza raised an eyebrow, not sure. That's strange. We'll just have to wait and see, I suppose. If guild arts is involved, it must be big news. The blonde nodded and began to browse, eyeing several items in the armor section before selecting a black undergarment style outfit. What makes you purchase that? Kana raised her eyebrows in question and said, those are for samurai. The blonde shook his head and moved to the counter. It's reasonably durable and incredibly light. With a hint of wisdom in his voice, he replied, this armor, which costs only about as much as a video game, could save my life one day. She nodded, understanding his reasoning. After 15 minutes of shopping, the girls decided to return to the guild before the meeting began, saying, when you put it like that, it makes sense. The fairy tale. All right, kids, let's get going. Makarov began by surveying everyone in the building. His S-class mages were among the people on the second floor, along with Luxus, Fried, and a well-hidden mist gun. Gildarts was seated on the stool next to the master, drinking leisurely, while the others were waiting for him to speak. I wanted to start by telling you how well the emergency order was handled. In fact, the council is quite impressed. Shocking, I know, he added, drawing a few giggles. The council detested them publicly, so it was strange to hear their praise occasionally. He glanced at his ace for a moment before hurriedly continuing, I also have a few announcements to make. As some of you may be aware, Gildarts was only participating in the tournament because of an agreement I made with him. In actuality, he requested my consent to embark on the 100-year mission. They were aware of the renowned 100-year quest being working mages, and gasps came from the guild as they gazed in shock at the man sitting down. But old man, that's a suicide mission, Natsu began, his voice trailing off. The building erupted in laughter, and as everyone turned to find the source, they noticed Luxus smiling broadly, his arms folded, and his eyes closed. Interesting. You're finally trying to reach the top, then? Gildarts nodded his head and smiled at the younger man. Something like that. Getting to his feet, he wished all of his friends and allies luck. Before I left, I wanted to share all of this with you. I hope you don't worry about me. After all, I didn't want to worry you all for the next 3 years, so I chose to accept this mission for a few very personal reasons. However, as everyone saw during the match, my strength hasn't diminished in the years. Please don't bother me too much while I'm away. Got it? Urza and Mira smiled from where they stood, believing that the man would return safely. He exclaimed, causing most of the guild to yell in confirmation. Some were a little teary, already going to miss their friend. As he watched everyone swarm the taller man, Naruto muttered, a brave man. His admiration for him grew even more. After 10 or so more minutes, the master calmed everyone down by announcing that he had one more announcement. The next thing I need to mention is that I got promoted. He clapped his hands and glanced in the direction of the resident blonde. We are pleased to present Uzumaki Naruto, our new S-class mage, today. The guild turned their heads in surprise to see Naruto smiling and casually waving his hands. Before he was confronted by his friends and teammates, he received a lot of congratulations from many people, including the other S-class mages. Fantastic. Congratulations, Naruto. Kana hugged him and smiled, causing a few wolf whistles to echo behind her. Happy for her friend, Lucky patted him on the back and said the same thing. Not surprising. Luxus said from above, praising the boy with the whiskers. He respected strong people, and he believed that the man should be on SS class. He would never publicly acknowledge it, but after hearing Fried's account of the fight, he believed that the man's ability to hit him was sufficient justification for placing him close to SS class. He respected Naruto as a result. HMPH, with that in mind, he made his way to his table while silently pondering future applications for his potent lightning magic. I have more competition. A voice in the corner said, congratulations on your promotion. The blonde sage turned to see Fried's familiar face approaching him, accompanied by a smiling Bixlow and an evergreen with contentedly distracted eyes. Yes. I had heard that you were quite good. Evergreen over here, I suppose, can attest to that. Evergreen didn't respond, knowing that it was absolutely true, but Bixlow laughed at the little twitch that was developing on the woman's face. Thank you all. Fried, it appears that we are in the same boat. The sage answered, turning to face Gildarts, who was approaching himself. Yes. He nodded, and they shook hands in a show of mutual respect. If you ever need tips, be sure to ask. Hey, could I quickly borrow Naruto from you? At last, Gildarts pointed to the second floor and nodded once more before following the man up the stairs for the first time. Gildarts arrived at a safe location and took a moment to examine his own thoughts before speaking. He had a lot to say, but he didn't do things that way. Sometimes his favorite saying was short and sweet. Let me get right to the point. Taking a deep breath, he scratched the back of his head while maintaining a serious expression. You are a very powerful mage, Naruto, and I wanted to ask you for a favor. Of course. Well, how should I phrase this? The world of mages isn't that straightforward, Naruto. Yes, it's shocking, don't you think? Ivan, that man from earlier. Do you recall him? Naruto nodded, recalling the evening as effortlessly as possible. He's been doing something, but I'm not sure what. However, it's clear that he's aiming for us. Fairy tale. Naruto recognized his predicament and spoke up. Do you want me to check on the guild? Gildarts sighed in satisfaction and half nodded. Naruto's eyes widened slightly, and his face contorted in bewilderment as he said, that too. And I want you to keep an eye on Luxus. Why? Because Ivan Draher is his full name. He's his father, Naruto realized, and he nodded contentedly. I see. How annoying. All right, I'll watch him carefully. Is there anything else? The man's genuine smile this time caused Naruto to watch with curiosity. Be more resilient. I am aware that the conclusion a few days ago left you feeling a little let down. I was, too. Both of us have egos and are extremely strong mages. I'm going to come back and kick your ass Sunny someday. So, get stronger, and we'll fight it out. Naruto nodded in agreement, something he would gladly accept. He relished the opportunity to defeat an opponent who was regarded as the greatest in the world. There will be no holds barred when we fight again. We go all out. The man offered the younger Jinchuriki a hand, which Naruto accepted without question. Hell, I'll even find us a good place to duke it out without interruptions, he added. Powerful men will constantly feel the need to prove themselves to the outside world. The blonde quoted fluently, those who say otherwise are liars and cowards. Jiraiya had told him this repeatedly and had even included it in his well-known book series. Indeed. Gildarts laughed, and the two mages went back downstairs to the first floor. I'm heading out early tomorrow. In the next 3 years, this will be our final conversation. I'm heading home to wrap up my packing before going to bed early. Don't want to waste too much energy. Gildarts then slowly left. Although it was a depressing moment, many people, especially Naruto, had faith that he would return. CRRRRSH. The entire guild turned to watch as the sound of the wall breaking completely sounded, and the tall man laughed sheepishly. Oops. After saying, I'll pay for that when I get back, Gildarts ran home without intending to pay anything at all. A few moments later, the entire building erupted in a laugh that was a combination of laughter, nostalgia, and camaraderie. To their own delight, Fairy Tail was home to some of the world's most bizarre individuals. Following the meeting didn't last long, and most of the members left right away, but Naruto had to tell them about a new mission they had been given. So, you're saying that we're going on a S-ranked mission? Kana spoke slowly, as if she was having trouble understanding the phrase. He dutifully replied, yup. Lucky took the initiative this time. And, you're saying that we're going right now, as in right now, he gave a second nod. Yup. There was nothing to say as Kana and Lucky both kept staring at the blonde as though he were insane. He wasn't surprised because he had already grown accustomed to it from both of his lives. In fact, it was always a funny sight to witness. What's the matter? When he said, I thought you'd both be excited, they shook their heads. That's not it, but are we truly prepared for it? You are Naruto, after all, but what about us? We just completed our first A-ranked mission a week ago. He sighed, realizing their predicament, and began to reconsider his decision. Well, I suppose I'll let the master know that I'll be going alone if neither of you wants to go. There's no point in making you all go, is there? Any meager dark guild can be handled by me, the sage said, closing his eyes. Wait a minute. We're just a little taken aback. I didn't mean it that way. This is really huge. The resident blonde smiled as the brunette spoke quickly. I'm kind of overwhelmed here, you know. Well, I didn't want to rush you too, but I had intended to leave right now. I will be departing tonight, so if you are coming, please meet me at the train station. Just letting them know ahead of time doesn't mean you have to go. He concluded with a slight smile and turned to head home. There is absolutely no pressure, so don't come if you don't feel adequate. What ought we to do? Lucky remarked as she watched Naruto disappear over the horizon. Like Kana, she was a little taken aback by Naruto's careless handling of an S-ranked mission, and it was well known that those missions did result in fatalities. The brunette had little to say, still recalling the sage's smile, which she had never seen before because Fairy Tail was always smiling and laughing, and it reminded her of a rather melancholy smile that someone would wear if they were going to leave without a reason. That evening Naruto looked up at the stars, wondering if he would ever see one in his future life. He felt a tapping sensation from his shoulders and met his Exceed partner's gaze. The quiet night always had a reassuring aura for him. The winds were always softer at night than during the day. The breeze calmed his face and caused a genuine smile because of the scene's beauty. "Will they arrive?" she asked wearily, clearly not enjoying the thought of going somewhere at night. "I don't know. I'll hold off for another 20 minutes or so. Bob shouldn't have to wait long, do I? In addition, the train hasn't arrived yet." Saying something like that is unnecessary. The man is someone I've seen while traveling. He is incredibly patient, even though he is a little weird, she continued, grinning to herself. "Strange. What are you saying?" Naruto inquired, causing the blue cat to laugh. "You'll see. Despite being a very strange man, he is powerful. He might even be your match. Well, perhaps. You two have never before engaged in full force combat that I have witnessed." Her muse was stopped when the blonde laughed. "But I think I've seen a hint of your full power," she thought, recalling the tournament as if it had happened yesterday. "No, neither Gildarts nor I had reached our maximum potential. Did we not wish for Magnolia to be destroyed?" He gave her a painful pat on the head while laughing at her somewhat shaky expression. "TCH. Well, one day, I'll discover your secret strength." The blonde shook his head and smiled. Ignoring the Kyuubi's pout from the back of his head, he thought sadly, "I hope no one ever meets my full power." "So, what is the purpose of this mission?" Tayuya inquired. "After we get on the road, I'll explain. Later on, Bob will provide us with a detailed account." Taking another look at the sky, he started to reflect on the few months he had been here, from his first encounter with the guild to the present. He quickly established a strong reputation and made many close friends, and his greatest talent was constantly coming up with new ways to build relationships and trust. He was now thinking about his teammates. He had built a relationship of trust with Kana and Lucky, and trust was always necessary for teamwork or they wouldn't be. He now trusted them to decide whether or not they would come. He didn't care whether they did or didn't, but he wanted them to make sure that their choice was one they wouldn't regret. A half-dead body in a sacrificial position was placed in the center of an elaborate array of runes and seals that covered half the wall and almost the entire floor of a clear white room. "Well, turn on the seal," one lone woman barked. At least 15 scientists sat in a room next to the white room, watching intently, eager to learn the true meaning of the rune. Their master had informed them of its significance, so it would be an understatement to say that they were intrigued. As she spoke, the runes and seals started to glow dark red. Since everyone was a scientist, they all understood that this meant that the sacrificial body was slowly vanishing, and red was often a suitable color to indicate the death of an offering. A redhead said, "It's working," as she witnessed the materialization of a second body. Her lord had provided her with a variety of tools, such as seals and research that was prohibited, and she was now witnessing her labors in progress, with a strong sense of excitement coursing through her body. Now that the sacrificial body had vanished entirely, a new body had taken its place. A man with long dark black hair, closed light brown eyes, and an all-around feminine face who lay naked and appeared to be unconscious to them. As the red-headed woman gazed at the face of the man they had called, the sounds of pens scrawling on paper drowned out the sounds of the 15 scientists approaching the body and beginning to take numerous notes on their success. "It's unbelievable that it worked. The Kenkan Kawairimi, universe replacement, seal was the one that truly functioned. Is this man truly among the greatest generals of war in the history of my lord?" She thought. "He doesn't look very powerful. Maybe we made a mistake." She was clearly upset about the prospect of disappointing her master, and she closed her eyes for a brief moment before widening them when she heard a scream coming from behind her. She turned her head and saw the man who had been unconscious staring at her with a fierce glare. "WH," was all she could say before half freezing. "Where am I and who are you?" The woman was a little startled by the seemingly innocuous man becoming a dangerous predator after he growled menacingly. "My name is Ursane. My lord asked me to call you here," the man said, raising his eyebrows in confusion. "Lord? Who is this lord?" He answered. He pulled a plain, small piece of folded paper from her front pocket and said, "H. He suspected that you'd be hostile like this, so he told me to give you something." As he read the contents, a slow smirk started to appear on his face. Well, it appears that the Judem has summoned me to fight once more. Ha, it will be enjoyable. To her relief, he unfroze her while laughing hysterically at the situation. The dark-haired man gave the woman a funny look. So you're serving him, aren't you? Bring me to him. She nodded. He needs to give me a damn good explanation. Excellent. I'll summon him to the vessel. However, first, would you be able to unfreeze my subordinate? The red-headed woman was shocked by the man's casualness as he looked at her frozen lackeys, grinned naively, and smashed them to pieces. They deserved that since they called me when I was occupied. She nodded, frightened by the man's serene yet menacing aura. You are fortunate that I need you to bring me to your lord, or you'd be dead as well. She studied him closely, seeing a veteran's expression in his eyes. He was exuding an aura that was almost as sinister as that of her own master, but in a different way. She noticed it now. The creature they had called forth. At last, the powerful Leviathan had woken up from his icy sleep. Magnolia, he was a little let down after waiting for 20 minutes without seeing any of his friends. It's not his teammates, but the choice they made. They were nowhere to be seen. Well, time to go. Are you gonna be asleep? The trip will be pretty long, you know, Naruto said loudly. He started to slowly leave after hearing the train approach. A card flew down in front of him as he was ready to enter, and roots began to grow on his foot. Naruto turned around, grinning at the unexpected gesture, and saw both of his teammates sprinting full speed in his direction. They shouted, "Wait for us," while toting a bunch of bags. "You're late," he shouted, gesturing to the train in back. Just before the door closed, Tayuya was half asleep and smiling after they had both tackled him. The team laughed a little as they stood up. "Sorry, we were just packing." Canis smiled and said to him. With a nod, the blonde pointed to the seats behind them. As they nodded and assumed their professional posture, they said, "Come on, I'll give you guys the briefing." Naruto smiled more broadly at the seats as he stood in front of them. His shoulders snarled as he remarked, "I'm glad you guys came. Would have been boring if I had to do this myself." He put the folders in front of them and laughed, saying, "Oh, sorry hee. I meant, do this alone with Tayuya." Lucky said, "So what's in this?" They opened the document and gasped as they read about the situation. This is a brief description of the request. Apparently, a dark guild has been running amok around a certain area. Blue Pegasus would normally handle this area, but they sent a help request. Most of their members have been out of action recently, y'all see. With her brunette friend nodding in agreement, the violet-haired teen said, This is terrible." "Indeed. Bob will give us a full briefing later, so for now, let's enjoy the ride." At the Blue Pegasus, everyone in the area was shaken by the scream. It came from a dark-eyed, green-haired woman who appeared to be in her 20s. To the chagrin of the master, she had a large following. The tirade continued until the master, Bob, finally became weary. "What do you mean by that? Why are you giving me this job tomorrow? I don't want to work with some stupid fairies. They always cause a lot of trouble. Me and Ichia will be enough." Normally, he was a very patient man. The woman in front of her, however, occasionally drove him insane. From her sultry and filthy attitude to her selfishness. The woman was essentially stopped in her tracks when his murderous intent started to envelop him. "HMPH. You will listen to me, or do you want that punishment?" She exclaimed, What? Fine, damn it," and hurried out of the room. Her fans enthusiastically follow her. Bob let out a disappointed sigh, praying that his choice wouldn't lead to too many issues. "I pity the man that has to deal with Karen." Pegasus in blue. Wow, this place is pretty cool. The three of them talked and laughed a lot during the 10-hour drive to their destination. Since it was still early when they got there, the team decided to stay at a hotel to get some rest instead of going to the guild until the afternoon. Because of Kana's insistence and the fact that she was relatively inexpensive for such accommodations, the three of them shared the room. And now, after walking aimlessly for 30 minutes, they had reached the guild. The structure itself resembled a mansion. The sheer volume of glittering twinkles from the walls demonstrated how authentic the interior design was intended to be. Everything was as pristine as Naruto could have imagined. Naruto looked around to see if anyone was nearby and said, "Indeed. Now, let's go find the master." He was about to go up the stairs when he noticed something. Additionally, that was a sight to remember. Regretfully. "Hello, honey." The encounter was extremely uncomfortable. Naruto believed that the man was standing directly above them, wearing a dress suit that appeared to be white and adorned with a rose on his chest. Upon closer inspection, Naruto identified a chain belt that contained a variety of lab-style bottles. The man's gravely deformed face, however, was the most terrifying feature. The young sage has never seen someone so ugly in his life. He was about to burst out laughing when he heard the Kyuubi laughing his ass off from inside his seal. He tried to suppress the urge to laugh out loud by covering his mouth with his hands. He thought angrily, "Come on Naruto. You're the 7th Hokage, control yourself." Before doing so, the blonde glanced at his teammates, curious to see how they would respond, only to witness the man with the disfigured face taunting them. "What the hell are you doing?" he snarled, losing the laughter he had been having. He marched over to the man and kicked him directly into the wall, leaving a faint footprint on his suit. And despite everything that was going on, Naruto had failed to notice Tayuya's momentary fear. With a sigh of relief, the blue cat thought to herself, was that Nietzsche, N.No impossible. Nietzsche is an exceed. Hey, what the hell is your problem? I'm just trying to make your teammates more comfortable. Naruto began rolling his sleeves as Kana and Lucky almost passed out at the subtle hint. He was about to charge when a second blonde man grabbed his shoulders from behind and said, "Well, you better get comfortable because I'm about to kick your ass." Unfazed, Naruto turned his head and saw a man in a formal black suit, with yellow hair that was spiky and tinted glasses. The man smiled and said, Now, you must forgive Ichiya here. He's kinda like that." Naruto sighed and scratched his head, calming down. "Alright, but if he does that again, I'm gonna skewer him till you won't even recognize him anymore. But it seems like someone beat me to doing that already." Furiously staring at the individual, the now identified Ichiya had the impression that a massive monster had suddenly targeted him as prey. He motioned for the two to take a position, saying, "Anyway, my name is Uzumaki Naruto and this is my team. Kana Alberona. Pleasure." She grinned and gave the blonde man a small bow. The violet-haired woman followed suit, saying, "Lucky Alieta. Nice to meet you." The other man smiled and waved his hands in defense. He chose to straighten up, temporarily forgetting his manners. "Nah, no formalities. I'm just any other man." Leo looked at Ichiya as soon as he said, "My name is Leo. Master Bob will be coming down in a few minutes as well. Karen is still in her room preparing for the mission, so I apologize for that. Aren't you gonna introduce yourself, Ichiya?" The man then knelt down in front of Kana and kissed her hands. "Of course, hello, honey. My name is Ichiya Vanderlei Kotobuki. It's an honor to make your acquaintance." To his relief, Kana waved Naruto away when he felt the sudden urge to kick his ass. Hi." The brunette had never met someone so audacious and eccentric, so it was strange. The brunette shook her head no when asked, "Oh, such beauty. May I have the honor of giving you a massage?" No thanks." The short man then started to head in Lucky's direction. Kana couldn't resist giving the man a strange look while she was sweating. Talk about a fast rebounder. Leo chuckled lightly as Naruto deadpanned, "Anyway, so it seems he will be part of our joint mission, huh? I mean, if this guy comes along, I just might go insane." Nodding, Naruto said, Karen can be a little flirty with you, but do your best to ignore that. She does it with every man she fancies." He wished he could work with normal people, but it didn't seem like that existed in this situation. As he said, "Not a problem." Everyone in the room turned to watch him as footsteps came from the stairs. They all watched as a breathtakingly gorgeous woman with green hair cascading down to her back walked down the hall in deliberate steps. The only person Naruto could surmise was Karen. From the perspective of the aforementioned woman, she was taken aback when she noticed a very attractive blonde in the lobby who appeared to be staring at her. Upon closer inspection, she noticed that he had a feral appearance with sea-ocean blue eyes and what appeared to be whisker-like scars on his cheeks. She raised an eyebrow, speculating about his identity. "Oi, who are you guys?" Kana was the one who responded. The green-haired woman glared at her as she started to say, "We're from Fairy Tail." For some strange reason, Naruto knew that this mission would not end well. "I wasn't talking to you. Now, you blonde. Who are you?" The dynamics of the team would be completely destroyed in an instant if Kana were to glare at her as she does now. Her eyes widened slightly at the recognition, and she slowly started to smirk. "Please refrain from speaking to my teammate like that. Other than that, my name is Uzumaki Naruto. We're here about the joint mission." Abruptly, her opinion of the mission was beginning to change. She smiled slyly, smirking to herself when he saw the other brunette woman growling. "I see. Bob is gonna be here any second. Let me introduce myself. I'm Karen Lilica." The brunette, clearly annoyed by her demeanor, gritted her teeth and said, "Name's Kana Alberona. Pleasure." Additionally, the girl with the violet hair said, "I'm Lucky Alieta, nice to meet you." Karen sighed and shook her head. She deadpanned, further infuriating Kana to the point where Lucky had to reassure her by holding her shoulder. I don't care who you two are. Anyways. Karen slyly approached the blonde Jinchuriki, making him feel a little uneasy because his brown-haired teammate was staring in their direction. The moss-colored woman began, how about you and me, but was abruptly interrupted by a voice from above. A voice from above said, my, that's enough Karen. I think our guests here came for business, are they not? Naruto was astounded by what he had just seen. Once more, was there a man who simply didn't seem to understand the importance of maintaining personal hygiene? Bob, the Blue Pegasus Master, was a bald man with wings on his back and what appeared to be a pink top that was more feminine in style. The blonde carefully winced his eyes and noticed what appeared to be powder on his cheeks, which caused his features to flush. Knowing exactly what would happen, Tayuya saw his expression and laughed in silence. What is wrong with this world? And I thought Guy and Lee had weird features. Stop. Okay. Calm down Naruto. You're the mighty 7th Hokage. You've met far weirder things than this. Remember Orochimaru's cursed seal? Yeah, that was weird. Ah, you must be Uzumaki Naruto. I have heard of your deeds from the gossip of my guild. It's a pleasure meeting you. The blonde replied with a nod. The master obeyed and swooped down to one of the cozier tables. N.No. The pleasure is all mine. Bob.San. Now, if I may. I would like to get down to business as soon as possible. He motioned for everyone to do the same. Team Otherworld nodded, recalling the footnote's statement. Okay, as you may have figured out from the description, this mission will be a joint operation between Fairy Tail and Blue Pegasus, correct? Naruto turned to the other blonde at the table and said, good. I planned on sending Ichiya and Karen here with you for. Karen nodded, asking, what about Leo here? Isn't he coming on this mission as well? She held out his key as a token of ownership, saying, he's my stellar spirit. Leo the Lion. Naruto's eyes narrowed just a bit. I see. My apologies. Please continue on. Bob restarted, letting his voice get more serious. No problem. Now, as for those nasty rumors that have been spreading, he said. I doubt we'd even know who they were without our magic. That's how bad it had gotten. Every single bit of it is true. People have been getting kidnapped and found later, without any organs and facial features recognizable. Over 20 victims have been claimed, most of which were teenagers from the ages of 16 to 19. The ladies of Fairy Tail gasped, clearly terrified by the idea. Karen winced a little because she was already aware of the rumors. Tayuya, who already detested people, didn't react very strongly. To her, this was just another oddity. Leo, ever the irresponsible man, did not respond. Ichiya's expression was a little serious, and Naruto simply kept his gaze fixed forward so he wouldn't miss any small details. We are still unsure of the culprit's true goal, but we know who the culprits are. Who? Said Naruto. The sage nodded, understanding his reasoning, having done the same during his cage days. The Dark Guild, Deslazars. Their hideout is somewhere in the forest to the east of here. My guild has not been able to perform a proper seek and hunt mission because my top mages have been out of commission for a while. That is why I called Makarov for some help. The flying man paused to reflect, then said, what do you propose we do, Bob.San? I would scout the area in teams before launching an attack plan. Information is your true ally on this mission, so that should be your most important goal. Naruto was thinking the same thing. Before recalling his master's words, he began, I thought the same. I'll take care of the information gathering. Actually, everyone on my team will be doing the information gathering. How about Karen, Ichiya and Leo scout the jungle? We won't be long, will that suffice with you guys? Naruto made the suggestion to the group. Kana was the first to say, sounds good. Lucky, who was silent from the side, came next. When Leo saw a look of disapproval on his master's face, he said, I agree and you should too Karen. TCH. Fine. Never saw any reason for all that though. It would be better if we just stormed the place. Karen sighed. Bob gave a headshake. The woman yelled indignantly as the master said, please ignore everything that she says Naruto.kun. She is a powerful mage but her wits are very poor. Along with many other things. Karen felt a chill go up her spine when Ichiya said, HMPH, it is fine with me. I don't mind spending more time with Karen. Chan. Leo gave her a back pat while laughing. Karen snorted and said, it won't be that bad, besides, Ichiya is pretty dependable. That made the man pout pitifully. Yeah, very dependable unless fighting a beautiful woman. Everyone nodded and got to their feet when the speaker said, "We will meet up tonight at 8 at this guild and from there, we'll plan an attack." He turned to see his two teammates looking a little agitated. "Tayuya, I want you to take us to where your informant is." "You guys nervous?" he inquired, and both passengers gave a slight nod. "Yeah. Not to mention that Karen Chick is annoying as hell. Damn it, my first S rank has to be with someone like her." I felt the same way, and the way she remarked about Leo.San being her stellar spirit. It felt really sinister in a way. Lucky continued. Accepting their leader's voice, they grinned and looked at each other reassuringly. "I understand how you feel. But don't worry about it, if anything happens, I'll take care of it. For now, I just want you two to get used to the feeling of being on this mission. It's important that you keep your heads focused at all times." "Good. Now, let's go find Tayuya, Chan's little friend." It was an excellent day to be malevolent. Beatrice, especially when two of the world's most terrifying warriors were meeting from the top of the flying ship. In a tone that only two longtime acquaintances could hear, two people were conversing with one another. One was a man dressed in black pants and his typical hooded cloak. The other man was dressed in blue pants with white snow patterns on them and a loose, buttoned white shirt with a blue vest over it. The dark-haired man spat and glared at the hooded man in front of him, saying, "TCH, so. It is you Judem. Where the hell have you been? Nearly half the army has fallen when you disappeared suddenly." Rather than displaying fear, the other man simply laughed as though he had received the same reprimand countless times. "Ma, is that how you greet an old friend?" That made the hooded man laugh even more. "Friend, huh? I don't have any friends, and if I did, I sure as hell ain't foolish enough to make friends with you," he said. "Ma, that isn't a nice thing to say. Come on, huh?" The other man's piercing glare interrupted him. The recently resurrected man gritted his teeth and pronounced, "Don't you dare speak that name." His eyes bore holes of fire inside of him. Fine. I'll just call you Snow." After that, they both stood there for a while longer, ruminating over their numerous ideas. Although it was better concealed on one side than the other, it was an obvious fact that the two hated each other. But they had a great deal of respect for each other, whether anyone could sense it or not, because they were both very strong. The man nodded and motioned him to keep quiet. "So, are you gonna explain to me just where the hell have you been during the last 3 years? I have all day." Incredulous, the man asked, "Tell me, Snow, what do you know of the gate?" The hooded man chuckled in a haunted tone, his blue eyes briefly visible beneath his veil. "TCH, the gate, as you call it, is a story told to young children. It also comes with a short story that tells of the ending of one world and the beginning of another." Snow looked at him as though to ask him to go on, but was taken aback when he burst out laughing. "Snow, my friend. I assure you, the gate is no myth." It became interesting at this point. The antebellum. With great caution, Team Otherworld made their way down a lanky, foul alleyway. Naturally, the group leader was completely unconcerned by it because of his extensive experience in such circumstances. Despite their composure, the other two were extremely anxious and cautious. Despite being skilled mages, Kana and Lucky occasionally suffered from nervousness. When Naruto saw his partner's appreciative expression, he nodded and asked, "Is this the place?" The cat, breathing inside her clothes to avoid the foul stench, laughed to herself. Yes. She likes to stay in alleyways, but for goodness sakes, doesn't she ever clean the place? When Naruto saw another small figure with feline ears standing from what appeared to be a window, his initial suspicion of the voice was quickly replaced with amusement. "Ararara, it's not my fault. I am a busy person, Tayuya. Heim." This voice said. She was dressed in a blue gown with a pink flower pattern. Her face had 3 whisker marks on it, and her eyes were round and swollen. Tayuya nearly slapped Happy but decided to sigh instead. "Whoa, I didn't know Happy had so many relatives." Along with his teammates who shared his thoughts, the sage's eyes widened when he said, "Naruto, she is a human." Lucky stammered, What? I mean, she looks just like you." Tayuya palmed her face and sighed. The now identified Amelia, who was actually just a short, elderly woman, laughed it off when she said, "I apologize for their idiocy, Amelia.Han." She then removed the fake cat ears, making Team Otherworld look foolish. "Ararara, no worries Tayuya. Heim. Everyone thinks the same. So you must be Tayuya, Heim's new friend. I've heard many things about you. Uzumaki Naruto, or should I call you the Dark Dragon?" Naruto opened his eyes. He says, rumors spread fast. After his altercation with Gildarts, he was given yet another nickname. It was a scaled down form of his previous moniker. Emilia's eyes blazed with passion as she yelled, "TCH, don't underestimate the power of gossip. Information is victory." Even though he didn't see it, he completely agreed. Information was as necessary as food and water in the world of deception and arrogance. Without it, you couldn't survive. Unfortunately, he discovered that lesson too late. She pointed to a door on her right and said, "Well, enough of that. Please come in and make yourselves at home. A friend of Tayuya. Himes is a friend of mine." At the same time, the team said, "Thank you." Naruto was startled as soon as he stepped through the door and slammed his head into what appeared to be a wall. He looked again and rubbed his head, realizing it was the ceiling. Although the door appeared to be of standard size, the room was actually too small for larger people. Although the blonde was aware of it, Tayuya grinned to herself. Ignoring his teammates' laughter behind him, Naruto twitched. "You think that's funny, don't ya?" The Exceed said, amused, but her expression betrayed her words. "I have no idea what you're talking about." Naruto would have undoubtedly thrown a fit if he had been younger, but instead he chose to sigh because he was now an adult. However, the bump on his head was painful. Why does this situation remind me of something I saw in a movie?" Naruto muttered as he cautiously made his second entrance through the door. The location pleasantly surprised the sage. It was cozy. At the table with what appeared to be elaborately patterned cards, he arched an eyebrow. Kana was intrigued by this as well. She said, "Tarots? In it." The elderly woman grinned at their looks and said, "Ararara, I have a fortune-telling business. You want me to tell yours?" Lucky was just as excited as Kana, but he was quieter. However, Naruto appeared somewhat let down. With a gentle tap on his shoulders, Kana said, sorry, we came for information." When Naruto noticed the adorable puppy dog. Look, she and Lucky were sporting. He tilted his head and his eyes widened. His eyes rounded into circles and he pouted, which broke his heart. "Please." They both said, their eyes gleaming. He was always a sucker for these kinds of things, and this one was no exception. The sage let out a sigh at his passive demeanor. Kana hugged him and thanked him, as if pleased that her plan had succeeded. "Okay, but after we have our work done." "Ararara, now let's get on with this. I'm guessing you four came to talk about the kidnappings?" They all nodded. The feline, like woman, sighed and started to think. "Yes, we were hoping that you could give us a better insight of the situation. The kidnapping started a little over a month ago. My friend's daughter was taken just a week ago and they still haven't found her. I believe the kidnappers may be trying to use them as sacrifices." With curious eyes, Kana questioned, "Sacrifices? For what?" Emilia sighed and began, "Ararara, this is a long story. A long time ago, in this very region, a powerful religion dominated the community. The name of this certain religion was lost throughout the years. But we do know that the leader of Deslazars is a member of it. He must have had some descendant that practiced it for him to even remember it. In this religion, there was a prophecy. A prophecy that one day, a dragon would come and destroy their people, and if they couldn't summon a hero, they wouldn't be able to defeat him. To summon a hero, they would have to sacrifice 35 pure souls. And a mother. And with that, she paused. Taking a moment to look at their faces, I saw that Naruto and Tayuya were obviously disgusted, while Kana and Lucky were looking at them with horror. And it seems, that day has come. Uzumaki Naruto? The Dragon of the West closed his eyes, unwilling to accept that a simple prophecy would control him. She laughed at the straightforward response, which was full of silent conviction. "I don't believe in prophecies." Naruto shook his head and said, "I see. Well, that is all I know for now. I apologize if it is insufficient." Along with his teammates, he stood up and bowed slightly, saying, "This information may be vital. Thank you, Emilia.san." Tayuya said, "Yes, thank you, Emilia.han," from his shoulders. Kana and Lucky grinned broadly, clearly eager to leave. Now, no thanks necessary. An old lady is always willing to help with whatever she has. Now, about that fortune you wanted?" Naruto laughed and got to his feet. They nodded and watched as he and Tayuya cautiously departed through the door. "I'll be waiting outside." Emilia smiled when he was shot out of hearing. "So, what do you ladies want to know about your future?" Kana laughed. She nodded after exchanging glances with Lucky. Emilia waved them away before she could even tell the woman. She pulled out a deck of tarot cards and set them on the table, saying, "I know that look. I used to be young as well. Alright, let's get this started." The card in front of them was scrutinized by all. Emilia was as perplexed as Kana and Lucky, but neither was she. When this particular card was drawn, she recalled what her own master had said. "Everything is revealed through the arcana. It is impossible to avoid one's past, and there are always those who are unable to let it go. The lunar surface. The moon in the downright position. This means. After 20 minutes, Naruto was making every effort to come up with a plan to handle the circumstance. At no point in his life did he relish trying a mission that might involve hostages. Naturally, he would be aware that the best of the best in Anbu were typically assigned to such missions. The repercussions would be severe and issues would arise if one mistake were made. He said out loud, grabbing this cat's attention, "I'm gonna need your illusion magic for this one, Tayuya-chan." The blonde grinned as she deadpanned, "I figured. You're way smarter than I thought. How powerful can your illusions get?" "I need one that can blind a mage for a full 10 seconds in the least," replied Naruto. "I'll manage, Naruto. What you need to be getting worried about are your teammates. Like you said before, this is no fun and games this time around." The brunette sighed. As he eyed them both, he said, "Indeed. Speaking of them," as they walked down the alley grinning. Unfortunately, Naruto's ability to read beneath the surface was far too strong. The blonde felt their eyes on him and thought, interesting. They were excited about finding out their fortunes and then leaves with the worst fake grin I've ever seen. Maybe I should leave them alone. They nodded and asked, "Done already?" Kana was the first to say, "Yeah, we have a mission after all." Smirking at the idea of forcing the annoying woman to spend more time with the perverted oaf, Lucky continued, "We don't want to make Karen and Ichiya wait after all." "Indeed. Let's roll." The forest in the east. Right now, Karen was really irritated. Leo would be laughing at her darkened face if she weren't his master. It all began, however, when Ichiya agreed to follow her path. The 20 minutes of walking felt like 2 hours all of a sudden. The man was weak, foolish, ugly, annoying, and worst of all, perverted. She was certain that the man would have already died at her hands if Leo hadn't been present. In addition to his terrible pick-up lines, "Are you sure you don't want me to show you the way?" He stepped on a tripwire without even realizing it. "Ichiya, I swear if you keep going on and on, I'm gonna K." Leo said quickly, "Whoa there, what's that?" without finding it difficult to interrupt their conversation. He gestured them to a door that was obscured by a great deal of vine webbing. Being incredibly professional, Karen looked at the scene and immediately recognized it as a dark guild. She was certain that the Deslazar's crest was on it, and the scene was in the right place. She turned to face him and saw his eyes widen. "Good, Leo, what else can you sense from within there?" she asked. Silently, he yelled, "We should leave, now," and took his master by the arms, dragging her back to their starting point. Karen screamed angrily at the blonde man, "What is going on?" She smirked and pulled back her arm, confusing everyone. "They've spotted us, we need to run," she exclaimed. Leo asked, "What are you doing, Karen?" and Ichiya nodded. Karen said, "Cowards. We can take them. They're only a measly dark guild after all." Leo gave a little growl in response. He was never able to finish because someone jumped in between the three of them. "Fool. We're outnumbered and Deslazars is famous for their." Leo and Ichiya were completely taken aback by this and had to leap back when the man used a single chop to knock Karen unconscious and send her to the ground. Holding an unconscious Karen, he said, "For our sneakiness? Yes, the forest is out home after all." The man was dressed in short, loose fitting pants and a cloak that resembled camouflage. His eyes were dark, and his hair was black and shaggy. Leo snarled at the man just to be laughed at. "We of Deslazars are the strongest in the forest. And now, I'm gonna be having fun with this little lady in a second, ha 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 ha," he said. He glanced around and saw that there appeared to be 15 mages all around them. "Come on now. We live in the forest. Don't you think we'd have traps to alert you of your presence? Don't underestimate dark guilds." Ichiya asked Leo, clearly unprepared for this. "Damn it, what should we do?" Leo scowled and surveyed the area. "I'll make an opening for you to run. Find Naruto," he grinned. Leo glanced at his hands and grinned when he saw his rings. Ichiya obeyed Leo's instruction to close your eyes. Zenith of Regulus, Shishikoyo, Lion Brilliance. Leo began attacking the man holding Karen after producing a sudden burst of light that momentarily blinded their assailants. Ichiya quickly runs to find their backup after realizing what to do in that one moment. The man looked smugly at Leo and said, "Oh, you guys have backup? No matter, no one can defeat us in the forest." You'll find that our backup is quite formidable. Enough of that, I'm taking back Karen." The celestial spirit gritted his teeth, clearly furious at the moment, and said, "TCH, please, we have her hostage. You wouldn't want her to get hurt now, would you?" He nodded for a second time. Leo could only watch as he held a knife to Karen and said, "Good. Now leave. I don't need a stellar spirit like you in the way." The man had only one final thought before he left for his own world. "Hurry up, Ichiya."
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.